So this is the project for Boss Bitch Doja Cat. It's at 126 BPM. These are the chordal instruments, these are the percussion, sound effects, and here are the co-vocals. So let's have a listen.
I ain't tryna. Yeah, ain't tryna be cool like you. Wobbling around in your high heel shoes. I'm clumsy, made friends with the floor. 2 for 1, you know a bitch by 4. And 2 left feet, you know I always drop. First thing a girl did was bop. And the whole damn cake and the cherry on top. Shook up the bottom, made a good girl pop. You ain't even here to party. Hand in the club tryna pipe a Barbie. I don't wanna go with the flow back then until I touch my toes. I don't wanna roll the boat. Wrist full of rocks and I hope I flow. Big up yourself cause you know they don't. I choo too cause they hope I show.
I'm a bitch, I'm a boss. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass. I'm a bitch, I'm a boss. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass. I'm a bitch, I'm a boss. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass. I'm a bitch, I'm a boss. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass.
On the after, you've been the before. I've been the stallion, you've been the seahorse. Don't need a report, don't need a press run. All of my bad pics been all my best ones. I wear the hat and I wear the pants. I am advanced, so I get advanced. And I do my dance and cancel the plans. And you don't be mad cause you had a chance. Yeah, said I took it and I ran for it. I win it and I stand on it. Money on the floor when we dance on it. Shine bright when I put a tan on it. Said I took it and I ran for it. I win it and I stand on it. Money on the floor when we dance on it. Shine bright when I put a tan on it.
I'm a bitch, I'm a boss. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass. I'm a bitch, I'm a boss. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass. I'm a bitch, I'm a boss. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass. I'm a bitch, I'm a boss. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass. I'm a bitch, I'm a boss. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass. I'm a bitch, I'm a boss. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass. I'm a bitch, I'm a boss. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass. I'm a bitch, I'm a boss. I'm a bitch and a boss, I'ma shine like glass.
So that's the track. Let's get to the components. Let's start with the percussion. Now, it opens up with this Latin-like percussion and it sounds like this. So it's a combination of different instruments. In this case, we didn't use all Latin instruments, but let's break it down. So the first one is an agogo, which can be found on the drums percussion, single instruments, agogo low, and here's how it sounds. So that's pretty straightforward. It's also EQ'd quite greatly. We took out a lot of the low end. Without the EQ, it's going to sound like this. So we just wanted the high end bit of it, mostly of the high end. And then the second one is a timbale. And you can find it under drums percussion, performance instruments, timbales performance. Here's how it sounds. So it's got this sharp metallic ring to it. I took out a lot of the low end, which the EQ here, you can see that that's the low end and the high ends have been put in, and there's a compressor as well. So the compressor is here. Now let's take them out and see how it sounds. Right, let's just loop it. So much more body. So let's take the body out. It's just the clickiness. The stick hitting the metal, that kind of sound, I mean the skin, and just to push it up, just to highlight the attack of it. So when it attacks, you adjust this to taste, and then the release is sort of like a bit longer to sort of hold that ring without. So not only does it get louder, the sort of attack gets and the ring gets sort of held a little bit longer. So this is the Studio Fat one, which is one of my favorites for a more aggressive sound. So combine. So they're playing the same rhythm. Now the complementary rhythm is played by the agogo low under percussion, single instruments agogo low. And there's a few things happening here. So let's turn them up. Okay, let's see. Now, let's turn them off first and listen to the original sound. Okay, so it's pretty much straightforward low agogo. I'm gonna take away most of the low end. So you notice this percussion kind of goes into a particular like fairly trebly, not very body kind of sound. So that's the one, and use a compressor to bring out the whole sound a little bit. It's also a studio FET, and also I like when I want to control sort of the sort of envelope, right? Is to use an enveloper, which you can find under Dynamics enveloper, and you can see that the release is completely sort of like pulled down. So there's no sort of like a release on this. Without the ring, yeah, it just takes the ring completely out. So it's a very dry kind of sound. And when you combine everything, it's going to sound like this. Now, still need one more kit. And this is an Asian kit because it's got the sound that I want. It's under World Asian kit. It's that top metallic sound. And also an enveloper here. You can see that the decay is reduced, but or the release is reduced, but not so much. So without it, it's very ringy and washy. This controls it a little bit. So it's this very dry kind of trebly sound. So it's more about capturing the vibe than being super accurate in terms of like, oh, these instruments come, you know, from sort of the Latin group and we're just gonna keep it there. For me, it's kind of like creating a vibe. So whichever works is the one that works. And if you can notice, all these 4 instruments are being sent to bus 5. And bus 5 has a space designer inserted into it. So it's not a send. It's actually being rerouted to bus 5. And it's a very small room. It's a small wet room. And the wet's just minus 17 and the dry is 100%. So to give it that vibe, that roomy vibe. So if I'm going to play without, I'm just going to solo this. So it's alright by itself, but to give it a sense of space, so without and with, just gives you just those very short reflections, a sense of space, and I think that helps with sort of giving this percussion a little bit more realness and liveliness. And yeah, and then we come to this, which is the first kick. And the first kick is a pretty straightforward one under drums and percussions, electronic drum kits, advanced machines. And yeah, because this one was picked because of the decay of the kick. It's a bit of a longer decay, and I just left it as it is without any processing on top because I thought it sounded fine in the context of everything. Yeah, and you can see that more things start coming in as the bars goes by. Right, so there's a clap on the advanced machines as well. Same kit, advanced machines, there's a clap, and this one has a compressor on it. So good old studio FET, and has a little bit of a send to reverb, which is a Space Designer 1.3 seconds medium hall at 100% wet, 0% dry. So when I do bus sends, I always put it at fully wet, 0 dry, and here's how it sounds. So this kit is just for the claps. Yeah, without the send, it's just really dry. So for most snares, you need a little bit of a wet send to really kind of get it in a space, give it a sense of space. So here's also where, okay, let's start with the girls choir. It's this alchemy patch. So you can find girls choir R, A, there's all the different ones. And this one is, I pulled it to the chorus side. Yeah, and tweaked the release, I think, and the attack, yeah, to make sure that it sort of like comes in like a sort of this ghostly sound. And the release is just, I mean, the release is just 0. It's just once I let go of the note, it just disappears. But it keeps on having a tail because of the reverb chorus. So it's sort of like a reverse, almost sounds like a reverse R kind of sound, which goes together with everything else on the transition, which is like this. Yeah, that's kind of it for that sound. And this is sort of the introduction of the bass sound, which is playing the same thing. So it's this very sort of like a trancey kind of sound, and it's under bass, synth bass, FM pulse bass. So it sounds like this. Now, this is an EXS sample, or a sampler sample, so it's a pretty straightforward thing. It's not a synth, so you can't tweak very much of it. But I did want to sort of make it much wider, so let's take out all the processing. Sounds like this. It's okay, pretty okay bass sound to work from, but it's not very interesting. So first thing I did was to widen it with the chorus. You can find it under modulation, chorus. To widen it, I just use a mega wide chorus setting. That's kind of it. So much wider without. So it's much wider, and I really like the chorus for widening. Now it just needs a bit more reverb, so I send it to bus 1, which has two things. It's got a nice hall reverb at 100% wet, 0% dry, and also a stereo delay before that. So stereo delay you can find under delay, stereo delay, and yeah, on a 1/8 note. So it's this much bigger sound than the original one, just from the chorus and the delay and reverb itself. And then it's paired with more of a proper synth, which is an alchemy patch. And you can find it under analog bounce, under trance, obviously. Dirty punch. It sounds like this. Very trancey kind of sound. And combine both, I think it works really well. So I always feel like, you know, to get the sound you want, you sometimes have to stack your synths. You just have to make sure that no flamming is going on. So this one's actually a copy of the MIDI of this. It's very straightforward, so make sure that the notes are all falling on the same spot. And always have a listen solo with the stack, so that you don't hear any funky flamming or flanging or anything going on. This one's fine, so it works, and it gives that sort of like big sound, right, which is with the snare. And it goes on to the next section, where we introduce a new kick. And this kick is from Sampler, under single drums, kicks, electronic kicks, C114. So C1 indicates the original sample should be played at C1, which we did in this case. So this is really thumpy with a bit of a click at the start. Pretty classic sort of dance kick. The only thing we did was initially I had a compressor on, which I didn't use. In this case, I just bumped up the low end because I felt like it needed more sort of this low end subby kind of sound. If you don't have sort of large speakers or headphones that extend to the low end, you might not hear a difference, but I think this is quite important when it comes to larger speakers or a system, sort of a full width system with a sub and everything. And I think it sort of brings the thing to the next level, because the previous kick was lighter. And then we go to this thumpy kick, and then we have a snare on a sampler as well, under drums and percussion, single drum snares, electronic snares, and this one is D143. So it's meant to be played on D1, But in this case, notice that it was not played on D1, it's played on A1. So you can play the samples at different keys to sort of get different kind of tones. So this one's a sort of a higher pitch. So it's paired with the sort of clappy snare from the Advanced Machines sampler. So they kind of work together, right, to create this sound. And with everything, it sounds like that. So it's starting to come together. And there's this thing that I put down here to sort of emulate the voice. There's a little strange, interesting voice percussion thing that's going on in the original track. And I did something like that. So it's just this funny, interesting sound that I tried to emulate. I taking out everything. This is what it sounds like. So it's meant to emulate sort of like this weird voice-like thing. So what I did was I EQ'd, took everything out, right? So just this narrow band, and then I added what you call a filter, which is the sort of vocoder, Evoque 20 track oscillator, speech and voice 1, that's the thing I use. And just tweak the frequencies a little bit. You can slide this around to get the range that you want. So it's starting to sound a bit like a voice now. And then I did a noise gate to sort of get rid of all the... So noise gate can be found under dynamics, noise gate. So I want to get rid of all the in-between stuff. So you can see the threshold is relatively high, -23, without the noise gate. So it's this loose sound. With it, you can see that's it's a bit like a squeaky talking. And then I added a flanger, which is under modulation, flanger, stereo, and I use a high spheres setting. And then I send it to a bus, a reverb. So you can see this is bus 3, Space Designer, medium hall. And I pan it to the left a little bit. So it's kind of just that. And then the next one is the same thing, except that there's a vocal transformer inside to pitch it to a +12. So it's just an octave higher. Here we go. So there's two of them. And then the octave higher. And I think it just enhances the rhythm to something a bit more interesting a little bit. So it goes. It's not exactly how the original one sounds like, but I think the concept remains the same, to create something interesting rhythmically and it sounds like a voice. And you can hear the same thing happening slightly louder in the end. But before we get there, let's just get to the chorus, right? So the chorus is made up of a few things. One is the bass line. Sorry, not the bass line, the synth line. So I'm using this same bass synth to play that line. Right? So it looks like. And this is harmonizing with it. And this is a JP8 under bass, synth bass, JP8. So it's meant to emulate a Jupiter. It's pretty nice sound. Only thing about the sampler tracks is that you can't tweak them very much because they are actually under sampler itself, or EXS24 if you have an older version. So they sound like that. So these cadences are very sort of techno-y in nature, and this one is playing the same thing as the JP8, which is this sort of like buzzy bass sound, and you can find it under it's an alchemy patch, which is under heavy sync bass. So it's under basic bass, heavy sync bass. Let might be some tweaking under the hood. Have a check in the project. So it gets sort of like progressively more interesting, more harmonics as the layers are put. And this one is kind of serving as the bass, which is an alchemy patch called Invader. You can find it under bass Invader, and it's this very sort of like heavy, and you can see why it's called Invader. Added sort of a regular platinum compressor to it, because this one's smooth. It's just to sort of get level up. So it's biting pretty hard. Minus 19.5, and it's an auto release. So just kind of keep the levels there, and everything together. So it's kind of like the chorus synth with the chorus percussion. Now now the big part is the sort of snare clap typings. So there's an Infinity Kit under drums and percussions, electronic drum kits, Infinity Kit. That's the claps. You can hear that. You can see that there's EQ and compressor going on. There's EQ, compressor. I'm gonna take them out first without the reverb as well. So I wanted to get that clappy sort of trebly part enhanced, so I put that EQ in, that huge bump, and then I compressed it with the studio fat to get it catching a little bit, and then send it to the bus tree for reverb. So you get this pretty big clap kind of sound. And then this one is another clap. So the claps are really big on this. Drums and percussions, electronic drum kits, EXS 808. And this time I wanted it to be the wide part of it. So I added the chorus again. Mega wide chorus. To give it that width. You can hear that it's much wider. This is very centered. So it's much wider, and with the compressor as well on studio fat. And also sent to bus quite generously. So this one sort of like is the main one single clap. This is the sort of the group clap. And as if that's not enough, we added one more clap. And this one is something interesting I find. It's under percussion single instruments claps. These are quite real sort of claps with an EQ, same thing, bringing up the high end, taking out the low end, and a compressor. Now, the thing I want to highlight about this is that you can see that these claps are not exactly on the beat. So they're kind of flamming. And I think claps work much better when you kind of flam them a little bit. Sort of like offset the timing a little bit. You can see that these two are offset with this timing. Like real groups of claps, right? People don't clap exactly on the same millisecond. So what happens is when you have claps like that, it sounds sort of richer. But if I plonk them all exactly on the beat, it's going to sound much more boring and smaller. So that's something to know. Now it sounds really big, which is exactly what we want in this chorus. And I think it works well. Now in the second part of the chorus, we introduce this line. Oh, hang on, let's... Which is really nice, sort of like a rhythmic melody on top. And it's the first line is just a real xylophone. So under orchestral tune percussion, xylophone, and a bit of EQing to take out the body section. Just too forward, I just wanted to scoop it out. And some compressor to keep the levels kind of going. Just a little bit. And reverb. Sense of space. Now this was too realistic to sit with the whole synth thing. So we need to pair it with sort of a synthy kind of kalimba, xylophone type sound. So under alchemy, under mallet's wood, there's a kalimba morph. And that's what we used, and it sounds like this. much better, and I think paired with it would be perfect. And we use a compressor on this as well, so a lot of this is very compressed, and that kind of works. And you know, back in the another section here, you can see that it's exactly the same track, except that the levels, this one's -10, this one's -7.8, so it's just a copy of it. Where we need it to be louder, then it comes in.
After you've been the before, I've been the stallion, you've been the sea.
So you can tell that sometimes it's lower octave. So this is the high one, this is the one where it's gone down and the volume has gone up. So you can use sort of like this for different variances, like sort of a verse section you can have a lower, but strangely, interestingly, it's louder in the verse, or at least more apparent in the verse. So, you know, yeah, it's a different feel. And to enhance that, there's a wood block that you can find under percussion, single instruments, wood block high, sort of to enhance the xylophone rhythm. So just like a click, right? So just to work with the rhythm. And I think it sort of enhances that line. So that's the part that we're paying a lot of attention to. And also there's these sections here. These are just the snare bits to sort of like for the right before the drops. So you can find them under drums and percussions, electronic drum kit, deep end kit. And they, yeah, just kind of build up. And you can see that the voices come in, they really sort of enhance the places where the drops happen. And end chorus is everything together, coming together. So without the voice, you can hear that. I think it's got this really driving rhythm. And I want to talk about the mastering chain a little bit. It's not really a chain, it's just one thing. So you want to just do your levels, right? A simple way I go about it is on the master stereo out. Instead of using limiters and stuff, adaptive limiter, which I really dislike, there's limiter, which is okay. I prefer compressor, and compressor has a limiter as well. I use platinum for the master out because it's just the smoothest one possible. I move the threshold right down to 0 and the ratio to just a little bit over 1. Auto gain is off, and I turn on the limiter. So, you know, I find that it's a smoother output this way, and it might bite a little bit. Just like 1 or 2 decibels, I think that's fine. Sort of shaves off the high end at a very low ratio anyway. There's a limiter going on. It's biting a little bit. I find that that's a good way for me to sort of get up to level and still, in this case, actually it's not even up to level, it's pushing down level. And I normally mix it to -12 LUFS, sort of like averaging out at that, which you can do using your meters under loudness meter, turn it on. And what you can do is move this slider to -12, and then you can go to the start of your song, press start and play.
I ain't tryna.
And what will happen as you play through is this integrated number will change, and it should sort of like total at somewhere around -12, which is generally what I use for YouTube videos and the like. I find -12 is a fairly good balance of dynamic range and loudness, so that's what I generally stick by. So that's what you get for your mastering chain, or at least just to get levels up to, you know, to scratch. And I hope that's been useful for you. So happy creating.